Welcome to Living the Spiral. This is a place to slow down, take a breath, and listen to the rhythms moving through your life. Here we explore astrology, human design, the I Ching, and elemental ancestral wheels of the year from cultures around the world. These are old maps and living languages that help us sense where we are in time, what is asking to unfold, and how we belong to something far larger than any single moment. In each episode, we trace patterns in the sky and in the body. We weave myth with lived experience, intuition with practice, and the personal with the collective. Living the Spiral is about learning how to move with change instead of pushing against it, about meeting transitions with curiosity, integrating polarities, and remembering that every season carries its own powerful wisdom. When you begin to listen to the cycles, life starts to feel more connected, more meaningful, and more alive. I'm your host, Allison Dale, and this is Living the Spiral podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to Living the Spiral. I'm Allison, and I'm recording this the day before Leo season begins, when the sun crosses over from Cancer into the sign of the Lion. And then the day after that, Mercury finally stations direct after 3 weeks of retrograde review. So I'm really looking forward to the Lion stepping out onto Pride Rock this year because it's coinciding with the end of that soupy Mercury retrograde. I don't know about you, but I felt very stewy and soupy to me. Before we get into the episode, I just wanted to make a couple of announcements here. First off, Leo season is an exciting time here in my household because my partner Jackson and I are releasing Ella Map, your energy location atlas, which is the astrocartography workspace that also has human design cartography that has been in beta for a couple of months now. Thank you to all of you beta testers out there who have been giving us a lot of feedback on what features you want and what's broken. It's about ready to hit the live market here soon. And we have a free account as well as a premium and a pro account for professional astrocartographers who would like to have a workspace where they can save unlimited charts and have a presentation view and all kinds of extra goodies. So that is going to be launching on this Jupiter cazimi on the Aquarius full moon next week, next Wednesday on July 29th. And so stay tuned for that. There will be a lot more information coming your way, but you can sign up for the waitlist at elamap.com. That's ELAMAP.com. And yeah, it's just really exciting to get it out into the world on that Jupiter cazimi in Leo. And then another announcement is I am going to be hosting my seasonal ritual for paid subscribers, but it'll be available to the general public for a small fee. That's going to be for Lamas or Lunasa, which is the cross-quarter day between the summer solstice and the fall equinox. And I'm going to send out some information about that soon, so stay tuned for that as well. It'll be a live embodied somatic ritual that attunes us to this first harvest festival, the beginning of the harvest season. So it'll be a fun one to harvest everything that we've gathered this year. And my final announcement is I'm going to be offering a live course starting on fall equinox in the Northern Hemisphere. So the beginning of Libra season on 21st of September. And that is going to be a 6-week course that runs through the winter solstice. And it's called Ecosomatic Astrology and Human Design 101. Where we're going to dive into the planets, the signs, the houses, the aspects, the transits, the basics of all of that astrology, plus the basics of gates, channels, types, strategies, and authorities from human design through an ecosomatic lens. So through the lens of the body and through the lens of our relationship with Mother Earth. And it's really how I view both astrology and human design is this relationship with how the earth is changing and how all of this symbolism really came to be through ancestral stories. And I'm really excited to share it with you. I haven't done a live course in a while, and I'm really excited to bring this out and dive into the basics, really zoom out. I've been doing a lot of astrology readings lately and human design readings and combos of both on Zoom as I usually do. And also, I did a live reading table, like astrology readings table at a night market that just opened up at Santa Fe. And I'll be doing another one of those in August down at the rail yard. And it was just so fun to meet people who I otherwise might not meet on the world of the internet. So it's been a joy to hear how people's lives are being influenced and intersecting with this Barbo basket, this unprecedented energy of July. And I look forward to doing more. So my books are open. I have a special Barbo basket reading that is available right now for half off my normal booking price. And you can get that at hearthandspiral.com. Just click the booking link. And I look forward to intersecting with you in one way or another. Jupiter is on my ascendant right now in Leo. And so it's a lot. Jupiter expands. And I really do feel like my first house is expanding and it feels really nice. Hit me up if you're interested or if you have any questions about any of these things. I'll be posting links in the show notes as well as on Substack where I include the transcript to this podcast. So let's dive in. Before we step into the lion's den, let's just take a quick look back at where we've been over the past month. Cancer season a month ago opened with Chiron crossing into Taurus, which is a new era of embodied healing after 7 years of the wounded healer in Aries. We moved through 6 human design gates, the gates of extremes, stillness, provocation, beginnings, details, and stimulation, where the sun still is this gate of stories and stimulation when I'm recording this. And we followed the crab from the solstice all the way to this threshold of Leo. Mercury went retrograde in Cancer on June 29th, about 3 weeks ago, if you're listening to this in the beginning of Leo season. That was the same day as a full moon in Capricorn. And Mercury spent these 3 weeks asking us to revisit home, safety, and who's allowed in that space. Jupiter crossed into Leo right in the middle of it on June 30th. And so a lot of us have spent this season incubating something that's about to want a much bigger stage. And on July 4th, Mars met Uranus in the gate of provocation, which stirred things up right on schedule. Tomorrow, Mercury stations direct. So if the last 3 weeks felt like you were circling the same conversation about home and safety and belonging, that loop is about to release. And today, the sun crosses into Leo. So we get one season handing off to the next while this retrograde cycle clears underneath it. And this feels really fitting because Leo is a sign that's all about stepping fully into the limelight. Leo season 2026 is a big one on its own. Jupiter is still making its way through the sign for the next year. So we're in the very beginnings of Leo, Jupiter in Leo. And partway through the season, we've got a total solar eclipse sitting right in Leo, the first eclipse in Leo after the nodes move from Virgo and Pisces into Leo and Aquarius. So what we'll do here in this episode, as usual, is get into where the lion actually comes from, this archetype, and then the human design gates of the season, and then the transits. Again, I will post in the show notes this schedule if you want to just jump ahead to the transits, but I always like to give a little backstory about these signs. So let's just take a moment and start in the body. Take a nice deep breath in through your nose wherever you are, feeling your spine lift just slightly, feeling your collarbones and your heart lift just slightly, and release it out. Leo asks you to take up space with your heart. Leo rules the heart. And so instead of shrinking around or going back into the shell that we've become quite comfortable in Cancer season, just taking a couple minutes here to attune to your heart, attune to your spine, attune to that front body and that upper core where you can really feel that radiant heart energy expanding outward. And that is Leo season energy. Leo has always been in the sun's house in the Thema Mundi, which is the mythical birth chart of the world that Hellenistic astrologers use to explain the whole system. I reference this in the Cancer season overview as well, talking about the Thema Mundi. In this system, this chart of the world, the sun sits in Leo right after the moon in Cancer. So Cancer is the womb, and Leo is the first cry, the first light hitting skin. The sun rules Leo because Leo is where the sun finally gets to be fully itself with nothing shielding it. So the sun is the ruler of the sign of Leo. And in Babylon, this stretch of sky was called the Great Lion. It's been a lion for a very long time. And the Babylonians placed the lion opposite the constellation they associated with the gates of the gods. And it stood watch there through what we still call the dog days of summer, the hottest and most relentless stretch of this season. So there was a guardian there at the peak of the heat that held the threshold when everything else wanted to wilt out on land. In Egypt, the lion, it was Sekhmet, the lion-headed goddess of both war and healing. The story of Sekhmet goes that Ra sent her out to punish humanity for turning against him. And she got so consumed by bloodlust that she nearly destroyed everyone on the whole planet. And the other gods had to trick her into drinking red-dyed beer, which she mistook for blood. And when she was drunk, she fell asleep and woke up feeling good again, feeling a little less bloodthirsty. And then over time, Sekhmet became Hathor, who was the goddess of joy and love, the lion-headed goddess, joy and love. And so Leo is contained here in this one myth, the extremes of Leo, this ferocity and egoic pride that has to learn what to do with itself, and power that has to find its own off switch before it burns everything down, before it becomes that joyous and abundant with love archetype that we know Leo to be. In Greece, the Nemean lion was Hercules' first labor. The Nemean lion's hide couldn't be pierced by any weapon, so Hercules had to strangle it with his bare hands, and afterwards he wore its skin as armor for the rest of his life. And Zeus, as he likes to do, placed the lion in the sky. And so what I love about this story is that Hercules didn't kill the lion and then move on with it. He became the lion through carrying its hide on his skin and carrying its invulnerability on his own back from then on. So that also speaks to Leo as well. It's this part of us that has survived something and now wears it on our sleeve instead of hiding the scar. Leo is out on the stage, out on full display, and this story really speaks to that. And right in the middle of all this lion mythology, there is a date that you might have heard of even if you're outside of astrology circles, known as 8/8, the Lion's Gate. This isn't necessarily an ancient or agreed upon astronomical event the way the solstice is, but it's a more modern spiritual tradition that has grown out of the New Age and starseed community over the last few decades. And we got to name that, but also, I don't know, I really like Lionsgate 8/8. I think it's very cool, and it brings our attention to the stars as well as the planets. So whether it's the exact date going all the way back to Egyptian times or not, it's still very fascinating. Basically, the Lionsgate idea centers on Sirius, which is the brightest star in our night sky, which the Egyptians tracked closely because of its heliacal rising, its first visible appearance after a stretch of being hidden behind the sun. That rising lined up at one point with the flooding of the Nile and the start of the fertile time in Egypt, the start of their calendar year. So many traditions across the world have treated Sirius as a kind of spiritual point of origin. And some teachers link August 8th to a window when Sirius, the sun, and the earth are considered to be in a particularly potent alignment. That date also gets tied to the Great Sphinx and the Giza pyramids that sit at the edge of Leo's territory, where the Great Sphinx is faced toward the Leo's rising in the summer months. And also the numerology of 8, which is a shape that lies on its side into infinity and represents that infinity nature of the heart, of Leo's infinite love in the heart. So none of that is something that you'll find in a traditional ephemeris, but symbolically it really does fit right into everything that the lion archetype has stood for this whole time, since going back to the great lion of ancient Babylon. The lion's a guardian, a threshold, It's a moment in the year when an enormous amount of light is available all at once, and the amount of fruiting power, the plants and all of the living beings are coming out of the beehive, coming out of the shells of that intense solstice extremes and fruiting into their marvelous glory. So if you feel drawn to treat August 8th as a day for setting intentions or working with that Leo fire portal more deliberately, that impulse doesn't really need ancient backing to be worth honoring, I don't think. And just know that if you're on the internet, you will hear a lot about how the Lion's Gate is real or not real or doesn't matter. There will be a lot of debate and discussion about it. But for me, it is a marker of passing time as a Leo sun, Venus, as a Leo rising, Venus and Mars. I appreciate the Leo hype because that's just so Leo. And this day really asks the same thing that the whole season does, which is, what are you going to do with the heat that you have in your body, in your heart this time of year? Are you going to try to dampen it out, or are you going to live into its full expression? So the lion isn't just about showing off or standing on center stage. It's about being a guardian, standing at a threshold and holding heat that could either destroy or heal. So in the zodiac wheel, Leo is the fixed fire sign that is ruled by the sun. And fixed, it means sustaining. It's the center of the season, the center point of a season, whereas cardinal is the beginning and mutable is the end of a season, transitioning into another. Fixed is right there in the middle of a season. So you're right there in the middle of the dog days of summer. It is not closing anything out. It is not initiating. It is a sustaining fire. And fire is about spirit and aliveness and will. And the sun as its ruler means that Leo doesn't orbit anyone. Every other planet in our sky orbits the sun, and the sun is the only one that is just there radiating outward because that's its nature. Not because it's trying to prove anything, but because the sun simply radiates and has a gravity well force. The fire sign of Leo, I really think of the hearth being a fixed sign, something that it's tended to. Aries as the cardinal fire sign, that's like the initiatory spark. And Sagittarius is the mutable fire sign of the zodiac, that is about carrying fire, kind of the wildfires or the controlled burns that move across a landscape during that fall season to spread the seeds and break down the composted matter and break seeds open. That's Sagittarius, but Leo is this kind of summertime campfire energy where it's a fixed hearth that continues to burn long into the night. And in the body, Leo rules the heart and the spine, the upper spine predominantly. And not incidentally, this is where courage lives. It's where we say things that come from the heart when we mean that they're true and undefended. The shadow of Leo, a wounded Leo placement, can look like performance, posturing, needing to be seen at all costs. But under that is usually a heart that got told at some point that it was too much, and it built a performance to survive being loved conditionally in that way. I think the shadow of Leo definitely gets a bad rap as far as that egotistical on display kind of energy. But I do feel like Leos don't necessarily always want to be on stage. They just have a certain radiant quality that comes forward. And in the life cycle, which I always like to look at in these reports, Leo is the emergence after the incubation. It is the time, Cancer season is really a season of fertilization, of incubation, of the pollinating bees going back into the hive after Gemini season's buzzing around. And Leo is emergence of after that. So it's the bees coming out of the hive. It's the fruit emerging from the plant after it has been fertilized and gone inward to be fertilized during Cancer. So Leo is in its nature all about coming out. It's a coming out party. I think of just the stone fruits of this season and the citrus fruits and just what this beautiful creation that is all about sharing the seeds. That's what fruits is about, but they also are just so radiant in themselves, right? So in the human life cycle, I think of Cancer as the teenager writing in the journal with their hoodie on, going inward and thinking about all of the beautiful things that happen on the interior. Leo is the next stage after teenagerdom, which is the early 20s. It's like stepping out of the parents' house, stepping out of the nurturing home for the first time onto the world stage, going off to their first job, going off to college, getting their first apartment. This is Leo energy. And it's really not about ego for the sake of ego, but it's about a young person in this life cycle figuring out that they are an individual and that they have a hearth that they need to tend to sustain. They have a certain amount of desire to take up space and show the world who they are, and other people can see them in that light, and they're just there to show that they can survive being seen. I always think of the movie Benjamin Button, the old movie for some of you who haven't seen it, but it's a Brad Pitt movie that I used to ride my bike through the set of it in New Orleans when it was being filmed when I was back in college in my Leo season of life. And I really like the part of the movie where basically it's about aging backwards, going from old all the way back to young. And there's a point in which, as an old person, he goes on a date with a young 20-something dancer who's just so exuberant and so filled with this joy de vivre and lust for life across the table. And it really shows this difference between an elder person and the vitality of the youth. And I really always think of that scene when I think about Leo in the life cycle, just being really filled up with the juices of life. I know I was when I was 19, 20, 21, 22, through my mid-20s. And it's not like it went away, but after that Virgo season takes over and it's a little more of the kind of get your shit together phase, the Virgo season of life in your late 20s, Saturn return. But that early to mid-20s is so Leo, and the fruit of the plant life cycle is so Leo. So just tuck those away as some symbols of this season. And I really think that there is a real difference between Leo, the stereotype, and the mature expression of Leo. The stereotype is often a diva who needs constant applause, needs to be lifted up, center of attention. And the mature Leo expression has stopped performing for approval and has started radiating, because that's just what Leo does. As I said, the same way the sun doesn't shine for anyone's approval or anyone's applause, it just shines. And that's the nature of being. And I think that it's an interesting archetype to work with right now. We have Jupiter and Leo expanding this type of energy. And so there is this fear of ego, fear of leadership that is arrogant or aggrandizing. And then there's also the potential for everyone to step into their own personal radiance and personal leadership, depending on where Leo falls in your chart. So if you're curious about that, hit me up for a reading. Leo season is just, I love it. I'm hot. I'm sweating right now. There's monsoons. They're building up pressure, but I'm feeling the lion stepping onto the stage. So next up, I want to talk about the cross-quarter day Lammas or Lunasa, the pagan wheel of the year festival that happens right in the middle of Leo season at 15 degrees of Leo astrologically, but oftentimes on August 2nd or 1st. It is the Celtic Wheel of the Year festival called Lunasa, and it's called Lammas in the Anglo-Saxon tradition. And this holy day is the first of 3 harvest festivals, which are named for the Celtic sun god Lu of the Tuatha De Danann. Lu was a solar, many-skilled deity associated with light and craft and mastery. And in medieval Irish lore, they say that Lu founded the festival in mid-Leo season to honor his foster mother, Tailtiu, who died of exhaustion after clearing the plains of Ireland for agriculture. And historically, this festival featured tribal assemblies and athletic games, trading, and feasting on early seasonal foods. The name Lammas comes from the Old English loafmas, essentially, lafmas. And on August 1st, communities would bake the first loaves of bread from the newly milled wheat crop, which was the first crop of the season to be harvested, and bring them to church to be blessed by the clergy. So Lunasa isn't the big final harvest of Virgo season and Libra season, but it is the first cutting with the first bread made from new grain. It is a time of year where we can celebrate the fact that what we planted back in spring is finally showing up as something we can hold in our hands and eat. I've been really enjoying a lot of fresh baked bread lately. My partner got a KitchenAid, but before that, even he was hand kneading a lot of bread and has gotten really into beating the prices at the grocery store by making bread at home. So he's been baking ciabatta and big home style loaves and baguettes and bagels even. So it's been very lovely to enjoy that, and I'm definitely going to be pressing for some fancier bread on Lunasa or on Lammas. This is a beautiful time of year to think about what seeds, whether they are seeds of grain, actual physical seeds, or metaphorical seeds of your ideas and your labor, and what has happened throughout the course of the year, where we are now in this season of letting it ripen and that first harvest, letting our work be seen, even if it's only the first loaf of bread that is coming out of the oven. So now moving on to the human design of Leo season, we have 6 gates that are contained within the sign of Leo within the human design mandala. There are 6 gates that are in every season, but some of them span between 2 different signs. And the gate that spans between Cancer and Leo, the bridge there is gate 56, the gate of stimulation. This is known as the storyteller or the traveler or the wanderer as well. It's the end of Cancer season, and so it's really telling the stories of everything Cancer found out when it was in its introspective, inward-looking mode, finding the words for what came through during that season. And it's a fitting bridge because Cancer isn't necessarily a language-based sign, it's more feelings-based. But Leo is more of the type of leadership that leads with a story. And so the feeling starts turning into something spoken out loud with this gate. And then the first full gate of Leo season is gate 31. This is known as the gate of influence in human design. And gate 31 is all about leadership. It's about leadership from behind, leadership with humility. And in the I Ching, this is called influence. And its trigrams are lake over mountain. We're still in mountain season until Lammas. That is when mountain season ends and water season begins in the I Ching Fuxi sequence that makes up the human design mandala. And so lake over mountain is this first gate of Leo, which is this kind of still magnetic pull rather than a push and a shove. So it's that leadership that brings people near through being influential. The shadow of this gate is arrogance, and the gift is humble leadership that people actually want to follow because it resonates with something that's true inside them and not because it demands obedience. So this is where the lion learns that real influence is felt in the body before it is announced on stage. This is the baby lion singing, "I just can't wait to be king." And in The Lion King, I really think of it as like this desire to be influential, recognizing that humility is going to take us far. This is the gate that Jupiter is in for this Barbo basket configuration that's happening in late July as Jupiter completes that basket formation. And this is where Jupiter is expanding. So we're looking at leadership a lot in late July here and how leadership is changing and how we can step onto the stage as leaders of our own lives and within the world. Next up, the sun moves into gate 33, which is the gate of retreat. And so the season opens with influence. And then right after that, after the lion comes out onto Pride Rock and looks at the whole circle of life, Sorry for all the Lion King references. I just can't help it. I'm a child of the 90s, 80s and 90s, and the Lion King made a big impact. But I think of, the lion coming out of the cave, coming out of the Cancerian heat of the summer, and looking at really coming into their own leadership. And then the gate of retreat is like the time when the lion goes back into the den, which feels contrary to Leo energy as we might think of it. But we have to remember that no performer on the stage, no actor or dancer walks straight from backstage into the spotlight without a private moment first, without taking a little moment to think about what it is that they're doing out there on the stage. And in the I Ching, this hexagram is called retreat. And it's really about this wisdom of stepping back from the limelight, from this point of being the king of the jungle before you're depleted, rather than waiting until you're empty to go and retreat. So it's this conscious going into the lion's den for a little bit of personal respite and retreat before you step out into the rest of Leo season. The gift here in the Gene Keys is mindfulness, and that's the ability to metabolize your own experience of leadership and your own experience of being a radiant being, really metabolizing that in public before you share it with others. Next up, we have Gate 7, which is the role of the self. It's known as the role of the self in interaction, and this is also known as the army. So this is another leadership-based gate that's about leading through logistics, the way an army general would lead the army. Once again, not through commanding from above, but through being a good general that kind of works with the whole team. And so it's less about charismatic leadership and influence and more about logistical leadership. This is, again, leading behind the scenes, figuring out the strategy, the coach kind of energy, who organizes and guides without needing to be the loudest voice in the room. And for a fixed fire sign like Leo, this is a good thing to ask yourself throughout this season about how you can lead without performing. Can you influence work even when no one's watching you to do it? So the army general in the back room coming up with the plan. Then gate 4 is next, and gate 4 is the gate of formalization. This happens in mid-August. It is called youthful folly in the I Ching, and it is a mental gate in the ajna center in the body graph where it reaches for answers before it has enough information to actually be sure of them. It's like hypothesis gate. And the gift here of this Leo gate is understanding. And the shadow is intolerance, being intolerant about not knowing the answer yet. So this gate asks this Leo leader, the strategic and charismatic leader who's taken a beat in the lion's den. This gate then asks the lion to be a little more loose in its theories and tap into that kind of curiosity that may or may not have killed the cat kind of energy, but curious cat. Like pouncing on different ideas and not worrying about being wrong as much, not needing to come to the answer. It's the youthful folly to need the answer before the answer is due. So it's a living in the moment type of gate and formulating hypotheses without determining that they're true. Then we come to gate 29, the gate of perseverance in mid to late August. And this is the last full gate of Leo season, which is the gate of saying yes. It is known as the abysmal in the I Ching. It is known as water over water. And this is the willingness to commit to something without being able to see all the way through it. It is, again, that kind of moving from that curiosity and hypothesis into taking a leap. You can think of a cat jumping off of a rooftop and landing on its feet. Committing to what it is that you're doing, saying yes to something. The shadow here is half-heartedness, which is that 1 foot in, 1 foot out kind of energy. And the gift is real commitment. So after a season of influence and then retreat and then quiet leadership and reaching for understanding through making some formulated guesses, we then come to this energy of saying yes to whatever it is that you've been circling and expressing during this season. And then at the very end of the season, the gate that crosses into Virgo is gate 59, which is the gate of sexuality or intimacy. And this is where we break down the barriers between people. So something real, a real exchange can happen between them. So it's after saying yes that we are now moving into Virgo territory of getting into the harvest work of Virgo. After we've been a free-spirited lion, we're then committing to the tribe, committing to the rest of the lions and saying, okay, I'm ready to mate and make a new little lion cub. I'm ready to come together with others to express myself within more of a partnership. And I'll tell you more about that gate in the Virgo season episode coming up next month. But the full lineup here of Leo season is gate 56, the gate of the storyteller. That's a throat center gate. Then gate 31, also a throat center gate. That's the gate of influence. Then the gate of retreat, another throat center gate. And then we move to gate 7, which is in the G center, the higher heart center. That's all about radiating identity and sense of direction and love. That is the gate of Lammas. Gate 7 or Lunasa, because all of the cross-quarter days and solstices and equinoxes, all of those 8 holy days of the pagan wheel of the year are in the G center. And that's just one of my favorite tidbits about human design. I love it so much. And then after that, we move to gate 4, which is an ajna or third eye center gate, the gate of formalization. And then gate 29 is in the sacral. And that is the gate of perseverance, the gate of saying yes. And then Virgo season starts with another sacral gate 59, the gate of sexuality or intimacy. So the shape of the season with human design is that it opens with 3 throat center gates in a row, all about what is said or expressed, storytelling leading into influence, into knowing when to go quiet, silencing the throat a little bit in that gate of retreat. And then it goes into the G center with gate 7, the gate of leadership, like the army, more strategic leadership. And so that's that identity and direction center. Then moves into the ajna with gate 4, where the mind is really formulating hypotheses and reaching for understanding. And then it closes out with the sacral gate, which is all about the sacral yes, the pelvic inner region, the center of our life force energy that's saying yes as commitment. And that drives us towards the union that carries us over into the threshold of Virgo, bringing us in contact with the other. So I like to include these human design bits here in the beginning of the season to give a sense of the story arc of the story of the lion, story of Leo, as he evolves through this season. But you can always follow and find out more information about each one of these gates. I go into the I Ching, the human design, and the Gene Keys interpretations of each of these gates as they come across the wheel as the sun transits them through the wheel on my Mandala 64 Walking the Mandala series on Substack. And it's not an audio recording, but you can get it in your inbox by subscribing on Substack and follow along. I include somatic prompts as well as creative prompts to guide you through the 5.5 to 6 days that the sun is transiting through that gate during the season, to give a little bit of a deep dive into the energy of each gate. So follow me at livingthespiral.com. That's my Substack link. And you can sign up and you'll get a nice little email in your inbox every 5.5 days or so that will guide you through this energy. So now moving on from human design back into astrology, into the transits of Leo season for 2026. I'm not going to go through all of them, just the big heavy hitters here. There's definitely a lot going on in Leo this season. And there's a lot going on across the chart, as though the Barbo basket is still in effect to some degree. At least those 3 outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, making that mini grand trine together. But Jupiter is going to be moving through Leo, and the South Node is entering Leo. So there's a lot going on. So starting on July 26th, the nodes of the moon shift into Leo and Aquarius just before the full moon. And so the South Node is moving into Leo from Virgo. It's been in Virgo for the past year and a half, 18 months. And the North Node is moving into Aquarius from Pisces, where it's been for 18 months. The North and South Node are always polar opposites on the wheel, and they spend about 18 months generally in each sign as they retrograde backwards throughout the zodiac. So this nodal shift is a setup for everything else this season. The nodes are basically the points that make an eclipse. So this shift is the axis arriving where it needs to be for the eclipses in Leo and Aquarius to be happening over the next year and some. So whatever Leo theme has felt over-identified with or overplayed lately in your life and in the collective starts really loosening its grip around August 12th when the first solar eclipse in Leo on the South Node is going to happen. And it is definitely a hinge of the month, having the South Node entering Leo. The South Node is where we release. The South Node is a well-worn groove in our lives. This is a collective shift where everyone in the collective will be feeling this need to release things that are overly identified in the Leo realm, sense of egotism, a sense of arrogant leadership. Some of the shadows of Leo are going to need to be released this over the coming year and a half. And it's interesting because the South Node and Jupiter are both in Leo. And that means that there's a release, but also an expansion. So Leo's getting a lot of attention and a lot of energy, not just this month, but ongoing throughout the remainder of the year and into next year. On July 29th, there's a big transit here. The full moon in Aquarius is happening, and it's opposite in the sky from a sun cazimi Jupiter. So cazimi means in the heart of the sun, and it's basically when a planet meets up with the sun. It's like that planet is sitting in the sun's throne and receiving the bounty and radiance from the sun. So this is happening in Leo across from the moon in Aquarius. And the full moon in Aquarius is on Pluto. So the Barbo basket that I've been talking about a lot recently in my podcasts and reels and just all around the way is this opposition between Jupiter in Leo and Pluto in Aquarius. And then they're making trines and sextiles to Neptune in Aries and Uranus in Gemini, creating this basket or bowl-shaped formation. Some call it a cradle formation. And so Jupiter is across the sky from Pluto and the moon. So early Leo season is really asking you to hold this personal, radiant, Leo, expansive side of what you want, your version of leadership, stepping into your own leadership. And then the polarity across the sky with the full moon and Pluto is the Aquarian side of how your own radiance and your own lion qualities really serve something bigger than just yourself, how they connect to the larger picture, to the collective. And this cazimi in Leo, Jupiter and the sun are in gate 31, the gate of influence, the gate of leadership, the gate of charismatic leadership. And Pluto and the moon in Aquarius are in gate 41, which is the gate of contraction, also known as the gate of anticipation. And this is the first gate of the entire wheel in the human design system. It's the human design new year is in gate 41. And this is an energy of kind of the contractions that happen before birth, the pulses beneath the earth of a plant before it pops up into the air. It is a new beginning type of energy, and Pluto is exposing the riches that can be found from starting a new cycle, but also kind of the muck and the mire that you have to sort through in order to access those riches. And then across the sky from that, Leo's cazimi of the sun with Jupiter is this expansion of personal leadership and personal authority, and also perhaps new leadership coming into formation at that time. So that's going to be a big one. I'll be recording a separate episode likely on that, or at least writing an article about it. And there's definitely a tension with this opposition, but I like to think of oppositions not as a ping pong match between two sides of the sky, but actually as a infinity sign or a figure eight that goes from one side to the next. And we can integrate those polarities across the sky by recognizing that gate 31 leadership, Leo leadership, is really like the heart, and the Aquarius collective full moon and Pluto is like the circulatory system. And so you have the heart and the circulatory system as two parts of the same thing. They're pumping blood through the body. But one is the central pump, one is that radiant heart, that's Leo, and the other one is the networks and channels of blood vessels and veins and arteries that are moving the blood through the body. And so I think it's just a beautiful image to think about with the Leo Aquarius axis. And that'll be coming up quite a bit as the nodes are in those two signs as well. So this full moon in Aquarius is definitely going to feel bigger than a regular full moon because it is opposite that Jupiter cazimi. And it's also landing close to the lunar nodes, which shifted into Leo and Aquarius just 3 days before this moon. So this full moon is basically standing along the eclipse axis within the signs without being an eclipse itself. And I feel like it's a preview of the main eclipse that's actually happening on August 12th. And the sun being cazimi with Jupiter at the same time is this amplification of that Leo energy, that amplification of the solar energy of the sun in its home sign of Leo. And so I think personally, this full moon is really going to ask you where your own light and your community can integrate with each other, as well as where there's tensions between the self, your radiant heart, and the community, the larger networks of people. Leo is definitely more of an individualistic sign who tends to want creativity and self-expression. I think of Leo as the self-expression sign, and then Aquarius across the sky is a collective expression, the societal expression. And so Aquarius really wants you to fold into something bigger, a group or a cause or a friendship or a shared future with someone or with a group. And so whatever's been building since the eclipse season started back in February is going to feel a little more urgent at this time during this full moon. And you might notice tension between wanting personal recognition for your own creativity and your own expression, and also wanting to belong to something, a network that's larger than yourself. And this full moon isn't necessarily going to resolve that tension. It's just going to make it more of a mirror between those two parts of your life. Full moons are always like mirrors with the sun on one side of the sky and the moon on one side. And then we have Jupiter and Pluto in the mix here too. So it's an extra potent mirror, I would say. And then the Venus-Mars square could definitely be something that stirs up friction in our desires, our love, or how we're asserting ourselves. So don't be surprised on this full moon if something in a relationship or a creative project might come to a head around this date. So it's a good day to be open to mirrors, to be open to reflections of how you are showing up within a larger collective. And on the collective level, Aquarius rules technology and revolutions and the collective in general, kind of humanity at large, while Leo rules individuals like leaders and monarchs and anyone that is used to being the center of attention. So when the sun and Jupiter cazimi in Leo are opposing this moon and Pluto along this nodal axis where the eclipse axis is, this full moon is really about the tension between individual power and the will of the people. So that's definitely something that we've had on the tip of our tongues for a while. But you can watch for stories in the news about leadership being challenged by collective pushback, technology and AI conversations reaching some kind of turning point, or public figures, people in the public light, having a very visible moment of reckoning around how they've been using their platforms. This is also a strong moment for humanitarian causes and grassroots organizing to gain real traction, I believe, since Aquarius does favor the group over the individual. And it's in that gate of new beginnings, that gate of the contractions that happen before the new cycle begins. And so whatever surfaces on this full moon is likely connected to the bigger eclipse story and the eclipses that will be happening over the next year and a half that's going to keep unfolding throughout that time. So that's the big one. Right before the eclipse, a few of the personal planets are shifting into new territory. On August 6th, Venus is moving into Libra, which Venus is at home in Libra. Venus loves being in Libra, so this softened things quite a bit. This is a placement that's about valuing balance and aesthetics and give and take in relationships. So it is a real contrast to the Leo energy that's running the show, taking the show right now. So Venus in Libra will be a nice, soft, harmonizing kind of placement there. And then on August 9th, Mercury is moving into Leo, and that's 3 days before the eclipse, joining Jupiter in Leo and really giving the way that we communicate and our minds a more expressive, warmer tone, more of that storytelling quality that we've talked about right as things build up toward this big eclipse. So both of these arrive as kind of a setup. Venus in Libra is asking us to find some ease and reciprocity in relationships and harmony and balance to a relational sphere before the eclipse really asks us to release an old identity and a fixed way of thinking. And Mercury being in Leo, which will be co-present with that eclipse, is adding a little bit of that communicative flavor, giving a little more confidence and color to our voices, right about the time when we're going to need to speak from a place that is true to our authentic selves, not performed by our ego. And then on August 11th, Mars is going to enter Cancer. And this happens the day before the solar eclipse in Leo. So Mars is going to be in Cancer, and Mars doesn't necessarily love to be in Cancer. There's a certain diffusion to the action-orientedness of Mars. There's more of a protective quality here about security and the homeland and that kind of thing. So instead of charging straight at what we want, we're more likely to defend or circle around or be moody within Cancer during the time that Mars is there. So it is a kind of protective crab-like undercurrent beneath all of that loud, on display Leo intensity. So there's a certain amount of protection and shielding that might come across when Mars enters that sign before this big reveal of the eclipse in Leo. And then August 12th, that is the day of the solar total eclipse in Leo. It's a big one. And this eclipse is happening with both the sun and the moon together in gate 4, the gate of formalization, which again is called youthful folly, with this desire to make sense of things before they might be ready to make sense of things, right? This gate of hypothesis, this third eye gate that's really reaching for the mind to find the fact. And this is a total solar eclipse at 20 degrees Leo. The path of totality is going to sweep across Greenland, Iceland, and northern Spain. And totality will last a little over 2 minutes for anyone along that path. And in Europe, other parts of Europe, there will be a partial eclipse. With eclipses, you don't need to see it or be in that path for it to count astrologically. Eclipses work on your chart whether or not it's visible from where you live. And so this is a south node eclipse. That means it's oriented toward release rather than a fresh start. The south node is the tail of the dragon, whereas a north node eclipse is the head of the dragon, representing what we're hungry for. The tail of the dragon represents what we need to release. And south node eclipses can tend to bring something to their natural end point instead of handing you something shiny and new. And since this falls in Leo, the sign that the sun itself rules, these themes of identity and visibility and leadership, creative expression, whatever you've built your sense of self around, ego is a big word here, might be up for a bit of a release. And this eclipse is conjunct both Mercury and Jupiter, which are also in Leo at the same time. And Mercury is going to be opposing Pluto or during that time, which could intensify conversations and communication that you're having, bringing kind of power dynamics into play. Mercury is sextiling Uranus at that time, which is all about a kind of harmonious favoring of sudden creative breakthroughs or unexpected new ways of using your voice on this eclipse. And Venus is opposite Neptune in the sky. This is creating this six-pointed star that I've talked about, and I wrote a long article about around the time of the Barbo basket on July 19. But this is the second activation of this six-pointed star where Venus is in Libra opposite Neptune in Aries. And this could bring a deep kind of dreamy inspiration in love or some idealizing and blurring that you'll want to watch out for. So there's a lot of potent flowing energy. The sixth point of the star is on this same day, the asteroid Ishtar, Inanna, is entering Sagittarius and creating the sixth point of this star. That's two grand trines that are overlapping, like a Star of David motif that's connecting Uranus to Pluto to Venus as a grand trine, and then connecting Neptune to Jupiter to this Ishtar asteroid. And so that's an interesting double grand trine with two feminine energies in place. And again, I wrote a deep dive I'll post in the show notes that really goes into the significance and delineation of that transit a little bit here. But there's a lot to unpack with this eclipse. It is also the exact day of my Uranus opposition. I have Uranus in Sagittarius right on that where Ishtar is entering, and then Uranus in the sky is in Gemini in gate 20, the gate of the now. So there is a lot happening on this day, but I digress. I have to talk about it because Uranus opposition is a big deal in my world, and I'm just so curious about what it's going to bring through. But that Venus is opposite Neptune in the sky on that day. So there's a lot of oppositions. There's a lot of sextiles and trines. There's a lot going on. And human design wise, landing in gate 4 really gives this eclipse an interesting flavor. I'd say gate 4 is the mind that is reaching for answers, creating hypotheses, sometimes before it has enough information to be sure of them. And there's the shadow there in the gene keys is intolerance, and the gift is true understanding. So this is an eclipse that was really giving us a clean final answer. And what it's really saying is that we do need to release this desire to have the final answer. I think about Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, that show that was on Fox, I think, back in the day, that was like, is that your final answer? And sometimes you have to have a definitive answer, but what the skies are really telling us right now is that there's a lot in flux. There's a lot of different perspectives to take into account, and that's kind of the point. Pluto and Aquarius is bringing all of these different networks of channels together into the heart, right? And all of these different outer planets in wildly different signs, making these harmonious aspects to each other is really showing me that there's conversations being had that have never been had before, people sharing perspectives from across the globe, across the scale, and it's not focused in all on a certain narrative. So that's just really the nature of our times. And so I'd say that the eclipse here in gate 4 is releasing the ego that comes with Leo, the sign, releasing the need to be right, releasing the need to be on the stage and be the center of attention. And it's dissolving an old theory that you've become overly certain about, maybe a theory that you've been holding about yourself or your leadership or your creative identity. And this eclipse is asking us to sit in that not knowing for a while. Let that over-identification with knowing flesh out and allow all of these planets in this six-pointed star, this basket configuration, to work themselves out. We can't always know exactly what is happening when it's happening. It's like fish doesn't know that it's in water kind of vibes, but it certainly is. We can't always know about the greater environment in the moment. And the need to know can sometimes blindside us a little bit to where we need to focus, which is on how we fit into the collective. And I've said this a million times. You've probably heard it before if you've been listening, but the quote that I love the most is, the next big thing is a whole bunch of small things. And so rather than waiting for like what's the big reveal or the big disclosure that's going to happen, I think this is a time to focus in on how can I be a leader within my direct community and create the network of nodes that can intersect with each other and create this kind of Aquarian world. So this is all part of a longer Leo Aquarius eclipse series that started back in February 2026 and it runs into 2028. So whatever comes up around August 12th is one chapter of a much bigger story, a multi-year story about power and visibility and leadership and the collective and new beginnings, and really who is holding the light and how we are embodying our true power during that time. So pretty exciting stuff. Eclipse seasons are never easy. I think there are times to give yourself a lot more spaciousness than you normally would. There are 2 eclipses that happen, one after another in the course of 2 weeks, a south node and a north node, or a lunar and a solar. And so holding eclipse season loosely, knowing that we are releasing that gate of formalization energy, is a really important thing to do. So the next eclipse that happens within this eclipse portal or this eclipse season is on August 28th. There's a partial lunar eclipse in Pisces. And so although the nodes, technically, the nodes of the moon have shifted into Leo and Aquarius, there's this final eclipse in Pisces at about 4 to 5 degrees Pisces, which is the tail end of this older Pisces Virgo eclipse cycle that's been running since 2024. And so as the nodes again have shifted, but this is still the final closeout of that. So we have this total solar eclipse in Leo opening up a brand new 2-year story in Leo. And then it's followed by this final lunar eclipse, partial lunar eclipse in Pisces. And so think about anything major that's happened in the areas of your chart that include Virgo or Pisces since 2024. And this final eclipse here really asks what illusion or over-idealized version of that story is ready to be surrendered and released right as this Leo material is asking you to step forward. Pisces has been where the North Node is, and the North Node is, again, what we're hungry for. And the sign of Pisces is this hunger for dissolution and interconnection and like feeding that interstitial web of collectivity amongst all beings, amongst everyone on the planet. There's this kind of hunger for that as we release the over-perfectionism of Virgo. So the next eclipse after that is going to be in February of 2027, which is going to be an Aquarius North Node eclipse, an annular solar eclipse. That is then followed by a lunar eclipse in Virgo. So that's that final eclipse of the Virgo Pisces axis. There's always some overlap when it comes to the nodes and the eclipse axes. But then we'll have another solar eclipse in Leo on August 2nd, 2027. And that's a really big one that is over Egypt and it's about 6 minutes long, and a lot of anticipation surrounding that eclipse in 2027. So what you need to know for Leo season, though, is that we will be having the first of the Leo solar eclipses. And I've talked a lot about it here. Tune in back for another episode on that very soon, because it's definitely something I'm going to be reporting about. So Leo season 2026, end to end, basically begins with Mercury ending its Cancer retrograde right as the season opens. And that closes out those 3 weeks of reviewing our sense of home, our sense of security, our sense of safety. And the nodes then shift into their new signs of Aquarius and Leo on July 26th, which sets the stage for a full moon in Aquarius and a Sun-Jupiter cazimi just 3 days later on the 29th, where we are being asked to hold the personal leadership, personal radiance within new beginnings in the collective and that upswell of contractions for new beginnings at the same time. The season moves through influence, retreat, quiet leadership, and reaching for understanding without needing all the answers yet. And in the middle of it, Lunasa or Lammas, this cross-quarter day between the summer solstice and fall equinox, is really calling us to bring in the first harvest, that grain if we're growing grain, but the first harvest of the fruits of the year, of the seeds that we planted back in spring. And so even if it's a small loaf, bring that to the table on Lammas when the sun is in gate 7, the gate of strategic leadership. It's a time to think about the fruits of our labors and harvesting those at this time. And then Mars is going to slide into Cancer. We have Venus sliding into Libra, and we have Mercury sliding into Leo during this season as well. So a lot of inner planet sign changes. And then that solar eclipse in Leo on August 12th, that big one with the sextiles between all of the outer planets still in effect. For the most part, Mercury is taking the place of where Jupiter was in July, and on July 19th at that 4 degrees of Leo. So there will have another one of those basket configurations. And then Venus will be at 4 degrees of Libra, and the asteroid Ishtar will be at 4 degrees of Sagittarius. So it's going to create this full 6-pointed star, this full grand sextile around the sky on that day as well. And again, releasing the need to be right, releasing that egoic need to be completely have all the right answers, right? And so that's Leo season. We are being asked to release whatever version of ourselves was built for applause rather than truth. But that built for applause is only one side of Leo, and there's plenty of Leo that remains even after there's a bit of release of certain parts of that energy with this eclipse. Jupiter is still continuing to expand this sign, and so don't let the South Node and Jupiter cancel each other out. They're just different energies. Sometimes it feels like the South Node is releasing and Jupiter is expanding, so they kind of might cancel each other out. And I've heard a few people say that, but that's definitely not the case here. I think that it's really just thinking about how we can bring certain parts of Leo energy to the forefront and focus on our radiant leadership, self-fullness, ourselves as expressive, creative creatures that have a say in the larger collective story, but releasing the rigidity and the fixed nature and the ego and the performity of Leo with the South Node. So if we can pick and choose which parts of Leo to keep and which ones to release with that South Node eclipse, that's what I would say we can do. But it's a good season to ponder where you have Leo in your chart, what house. If you're curious about where Leo is for you in your chart, I do offer astrology readings, human design readings that look into the gates and the signs, as well as all of the transits. I do current sky readings, so hit me up if you're interested in looking a little deeper into all of this big Leo energy, the eclipses, the Jupiter transit through Leo, all of that. I'm here for you and would love to chat. And let's see what else we've got. We do end the month with a bit of a sweet note that I didn't mention earlier. On August 17th, the end of Leo season, Venus is going to sextile Jupiter, and these are the planets known as the benefics, the great benefic and the lesser benefic, and they are landing with a sextile. So it's this beautiful, harmonious, free-flowing energy between love, beauty, and what we value, with the planet of expansion and the sign of self-expression. And so this is a beautiful aspect that really can make generosity feel natural, or reconciliation of differences feel more natural. And so it's a beautiful day to lean in on August 17th. If you've had a tumultuous eclipse season for any reason, know that August 17th is a day to circle on your calendar for the Venus sextile Jupiter. That's Venus in Libra, at home in Libra, and then Jupiter expanding Leo. So mark that day on your calendar for the end of the month and have a beautiful Leo season ahead. The lion is a powerful symbol going all the way back to the beginning, the origins of astrology. And it is good to think about as a leader in the sense of a guardian of a threshold that can hold the heat of this time of year, that can hold the bursting fruits that are ready to fall to the ground and spread their seed, but they're in this perfectly contained season where there is so much life force energy flowing through. So may your Leo season be filled with that warmth, with that hearth energy of tending your own hearth and being honest about your authentic self-expression and what it is that you want to bring to the table in this changing world that we are in, these shifting tides. So I'll be recording rising sign horoscopes for Leo season in a day or two here. I've lost my voice at the end of this one, so I'm gonna go and take a nice cat nap. But I really hope you have a beautiful Leo season, and thank you for being here. Thanks for listening. Please reach out if you have any questions about my offerings. Please go ahead and visit elamap.com, ELAMAP, to sign up for free for the waitlist to the new astrocartography software workspace app that is launching, that does contain a human design cartography as well. It's really cool. It's just, I'm really in love with this product and have been using it a lot. And I'm really excited to dive deeper and do some more tutorials and informational videos about everything you can do within the app, but go sign up for it. It's super easy. It's a map of the globe where your lines and your charts are activated and highlighted, and you can kind of travel from the comfort of your own home and see how different places contain energies for you. So sign up for that. Go check it out. Link in show notes, elamap.com. And I'll be sending out information about that Lammas ritual for paid subscribers on Substack and launching this eco-somatic astrology and human design course on the fall equinox. So it's no time like the present to start talking about that. It'll just be a really nice 101 introduction into astrology and human design through this grounded approach and embodied approach. So you can find the link in the show notes or on Substack at Living the Spiral to sign up for that. And I hope you have a beautiful season ahead. Thanks again for listening.